Since I've had a little bit more free time recently, I have been reading a decent amount of comics. And the comics that I've been reading have been on the lighter side when it comes to tone. For example, in my little comic binge, I have read Superman Smashes the Klan and reread All-Star Superman. Even though both these comics feature some dark elements and themes, they're both still considered lighter books. And when I was searching for my next comic read, I came across this cover. They made a second one? What? So naturally, I clicked on the comic, and then this sent me down a rabbit hole, looking at some of the most controversial and weird comics. And at the end of this rabbit hole, I came to the conclusion: sometimes comics go too far. Now, I know that sounds like an open-ended statement, or a vague statement, like no duh comics go too far. They killed Gwen. But that's not what I'm talking about when I say too far. What I'm talking about is DC showing Batman's bad dick. Now, due to this medium, comics are allowed to take this next step. Because if a comic does happen to go too far, the comic can always be retconned or claimed to be an elseworld, which comics are, known for. But majority of the time, the damage is already done. So in today's video, I'm going to look at those times comics took that extra step and went a little too far. Whether it's certain panels or the storyline itself, there are plenty of examples to choose from. But we're going to start with... You already knew this comic had to be featured in this video. I mean, it's literally what inspired it. Because oh my goodness, this comic is rough. Spider-Man Reign was released in 2006 in an attempt to create a Dark Knight Returns story for Spider-Man. And in a way, Spider-Man Reign is Spider-Man's Dark Knight Returns, just devoid of anything good. I feel like a lot of people miss the point of why the Dark Knight Returns is as good as it is. A lot of people seem to think it is good just because it has a grim and gritty tone, which admittedly is a good aspect about the book, but the story works well in that tone. The story and the tone play hand in hand to make a really good story. And then we have Spider-Man Reign, which is not this. I fully believe that the writers of Reign thought the best way to make a Dark Knight Returns-esque story for Spider-Man is just to make it as brutal and depressing as possible. They took the Dark Knight elements and just turned it up to 11, like it's really depressing and brutal. Taking place in the future, in this universe, everyone who Peter loved is just dead, and New York is a tyrannical territory ruled by Mayor Waters, who keeps a vegetated kingpin in his office for some reason. I don't know. This universe's New York is also enforced by a police force called the Rain. Peter obviously at some point is going to become Spider-Man again, and Mayor Waters releases his universe's Sinister Six, called the Sinner Six. A good name, by the way. On the surface, this comic sounds like a banger, but in execution, this comic sucks, like really bad. And this comic does have a few ideas that with better execution could have been better. For example, in Reign, Peter kills MJ by having unprotected sex with her. I'm not joking. His radioactive semen kills her. And similar things in comics have happened, like for example, Betsy Ross died from Abomination's blood getting injected into her. And this may be a hot take, but I don't think the radioactive sperm being the reasons for MJ's death wouldn't nearly be as hated if it weren't for the god-awful dialogue. The dialogue leading to the reveal, and just the whole comic book in general, is horrible. Like the sequence leading to reveal was just bad too. Like Peter just dug up MJ's grave to get his old suit, and he's hugging her deceased corpse, crying about how his sperm killed her. This comic sucks. Spider-Man also kills people, which I guess some people think Batman also does in The Dark Knight Returns, which is wrong by the way. Also, Hypno Hustler is in this for some reason. I don't know, man, this comic's just weird. I also dislike the art, but that's me. Some people actually do like this comic, which if you do, good for you. Oh, and also, similar to Batman, in the first issue of the series, you see Old Man's Peter's ballsack. You know how just a bit ago, I was praising the work of Frank Miller? Well, I'm about to dump on it too. Listen, Frank Miller is a legend in the medium that is comics. He's one of the most influential people when it comes to comics. But you have to admit, his later work isn't the best. And Homeboy does have a habit of maybe taking stories a little too far. There's a lot of Miller's work that could have been featured in this video, and some are more controversial than others. But the one on my cover is probably the most hilarious, and that being All-Star Batman and Robin. You know the DC's All-Star titles? You know the one that brought us the legendary All-Star Superman? Yeah, well, this steaming pile of dog crap was the first of those. Now, this is probably the most popular comic book that I'm gonna talk about today. Like, I don't know what to say about it that hasn't been said already. All-Star Batman and Robin is infamous for its quality. It's legitimately so bad. Like, for starters, the comic doesn't have a plot. It's literally about nothing. Batman in this comic is just abusive. Batman literally kidnapped Dick Grayson, then forced him to sleep in the Batcave, and suggested that if he got hungry, to eat some rats in the cave. Yep, that's the Batman I know. Also, Batman and Robin almost killed Green Lantern. For what reason, I don't know. And I haven't even got to the worst part. The dialogue, oh my goodness. Moments ago, I called Spider-Man Reigns' dialogue god-awful. It's probably some of the worst I read. But this is the worst that I have read from All-Star Batman and Robin. This one takes the cake for the worst. The dialogue in this comic legitimately feels like a parody. This comic also features a famous line, "I am the goddamn Batman."
Who the hell are you anyway? Giving out orders like this?
What are you, dense? Are you retarded or something? Who the hell do you think I am? I'm the goddamn Batman!
The dialogue, especially with women characters, are bad. So bad to the point where people think that Miller is a sexist. I don't know if he is, I hope not. But this comic all around is just bad. It has some of the worst dialogue I've ever read in my life. But also, in a weird way, this comic is just so good. Not by any normal metric, but this comic is hilarious. In or out of context, this is probably the funniest comic you'll ever read. Funnier than the comics that are even meant to be funny. This comic is it's so funny, man.
I'm the goddamn Batman!
Now, before we get to our last comic, I'm going to go over some smaller controversial comics. Some of these comics were featured in my every recall comic video. So if you're interested, you can watch that video after this one, or, you know, just not watch it at all. It's cool. In 2001, Marvel released Elektra Volume 2 Issue 3 that featured a nude Elektra and a couple of panels. But unlike the Batman and Spider-Man nude panels, this one shows no private parts, as they're covered with shadows. But Marvel didn't like it, so they recalled the comic, and in re-releases, drew her wearing underwear. But honestly, the new panels weren't that bad at all. Like, at least not enough for recalled, especially compared to Batman and Spider-Man's. But Marvel back at it again, this time with Moon Knight. You know, a lot of Moon Knight stories are pretty dark and grim, you know, tonally, and sometimes visually. But this was just vicious. In 2006, Moon Knight issue 2, it featured Moon Knight cutting off and ripping off Bushmaster's face. Yeah. I don't know why. And to make matters worse, he wore the freaking thing. Why? I have no idea, but hey. In 2012, Swamp Thing issue 11 was released and quickly recalled due to this tentacle.
That's a penis!
Now, this is the last comic I'm going to be talking about today, because in my opinion, out of all the comics I talked about today, this one might be the worst. Sins Past. Where do we even start? Like, this is generally considered one of the worst, if not the worst, Spider-Man comic ever written. This comic is a steam pile of dog crap. If you don't know about Sins Past, well, good for you. This story provided unnecessary context to one of the most iconic moments in comic book history, the death of Gwen Stacy. So when you hear that they added extra context to Gwen's death, you're probably thinking they probably showed more of Peter mourning, or like more of the public's reaction. But nah, what they revealed is that Gwen had been cheating on Peter with Norman Osborn. What? Oh yeah, Gwen also became pregnant with Norman and had twins named Gabriel and Sarah. And they both died off screen due to their advanced aging. What? Oh, and Gwen went to raise the kids with Peter instead of Norman, which is one of the reasons why Green Goblin killed her. Obviously, when this comic was released, the public backlash was almost immediate. Like, I generally don't know what the writer was thinking when he came up with the storyline. Like, not only does the story really just suck on its own, it makes previous storylines worse. So when you're reading old Spider-Man comics that feature Gwen, just so you know, she's banging the Green Goblin behind Peter's back. You know, that one iconic photo of Spider-Man holding Gwen? Yeah, she was having sex with the Green Goblin. And the fact that it's been canon for so many years makes it far worse. It was barely retconned a few years ago. When it was still canon, they made sequels and other connecting comics that distance pass to try to fix it or justify it. I'm gonna be real, they should have just retconned it as soon as they could have. Or, you know, just not publish it. Now, not every comic that pushes the boundary is instantly bad. Sometimes pushing the boundary is good for the story, or even just the industry. The problem is when comics go too far, ignoring the quality of the story, and just prioritizing edginess or being quote-unquote mature. The best stories are the ones where the tone and actual plot play hand in hand. Or the story could just be Batman and Robin.
I'm the goddamn Batman.
I want to be Big Book. I'll be a part if you call me Big Book.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to call myself Big Book.
Yeah.